everyone. I'd like to give a warm welcome to all of you. My name is Renee, as you know, and you're watching Renee's Health Corner. And believe it or not, God really does care about your health. Last year, just about anywhere you look, sickness and disease was on the rise. And in the United States alone, someone had a heart attack every 40 seconds. 1.4 million Americans are diagnosed with diabetes every single year, and 1 in 2 people will get cancer in their lifetime. It was estimated there would be 1.9 million new cancer cases diagnosed and 609,360 cancer deaths in the United States happened in 2022. There's also a rise in the number of strokes every year, gastrointestinal problems, arthritic conditions, lung conditions, lupus, multiple sclerosis, and a host of many other diseases. The question is, why? Many people believe God is to blame, but is that really the case? No. The Bible tells us in 3 John 2 that God wants us to prosper and to be in health. And so if he wants us to be in health and disease is more rampant than ever, we need to figure out what's going on. So I'd like to bring something to your mind for just a moment. Something many of us learned in our lives at some point growing up, and that is there's many different types of laws. We have civil law, natural law, physical law, sanitary laws, gravity, physics. For instance, the law of gravity. We know that what goes up must come down. Well, there's other laws also known as natural laws. And when these laws are neglected in any way, the result is sickness and disease. And over a period of time, neglecting these natural laws, many severe diseases can set in, like cancer, for example. So remember, we need to take care of our bodies, and that's why I'm here, is to teach you a better way. All the information I share is going to be supported by the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy, medical research, true medical science that lines up with the Bible and the Spirit of Prophecy. If it doesn't line up with the Bible and Spirit of Prophecy, it's not good science. So I'm not going to ask you to buy any quick fix elixirs or pills or anything like that. You're not required to purchase anything. All I ask is you have a listening ear and a sharing spirit so that you can pass along what you learn and help others. Now, in many of the last videos, I've been covering the letter N in our laws of health for nutrition, and that is a topic that's going to take a while because there's a lot to cover. So last time I spoke on the bread, which is a staff of life, and this time I'm going to be speaking on flesh meats. So in the Bible, we're counseled to eat that which is good, and that's in Isaiah 55:2, and the word good here means that which is best. So according to the Bible, God wants us to eat those foods that are the best for health and healing, and he wants us to eat the foods that promote our health and healing. In Psalms 103, verses 4 and 5, it says, "Who redeemeth thy life from destruction, who satisfieth thy mouth with good things." And then Ministry of Healing says, "Too little attention is generally given to the preservation of health. It is far better to prevent disease than to know how to treat it when contracted. It is the duty of every person, if for his own sake and for the sake of humanity, to inform himself in regard to the laws of life and conscientiously to obey them." So we're also told in Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 406, that education should be given on proper diet. And that's my goal here today. Now, we're also told in Ministry of Healing that disease is an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions should be changed, wrong habits corrected. Then nature is to be assisted in her effort to expel impurities and reestablish right conditions in the system. So anyway, let's get into our talk for today, and it's called the dangers of consuming flesh food. So in the last days, it was prophesied through the prophet Hosea that flesh food would be not good to eat. And Deuteronomy 14:21 says, "Ye shall not eat of anything that dieth of itself." And there's a documentary called Meet Your Meat, and I'll have a link below where you can watch that. And that's M-E-E-T, Meet Your Meat, M-E-A-T. Excellent, excellent documentary. If you get a chance to watch it, it's well worth it. Again, now Hosea 3, verses 5 4 and 5. It says, in the latter days shall the land mourn, and every one that dwelleth therein shall languish with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven. Yeah, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away. Taken away means to die of sickness and disease. The flesh of dead animals that creates 9/10 of the disease in our world. That's 20 manuscript release, 374. Now, note Americans consume a total of 10 billion animals per year. 33 million of this number is cows. So the numbers are probably higher by now because this is from several years ago. Anyway, today chickens have the flu, cows are mad, and fish are full of mercury. Now, for the beasts of the field, there's ammonia found in your burger, and there's a link for that. 1 million pounds of ground beef was recalled in California due to E. coli, and these all have links below. Number 3, in 2008, the USDA recalled 143 million pounds of beef products due to E. coli. Number 4, U.S. beef is now being cloned from the DNA of dead cows, and that was in August of 2010. Number 5, carbon monoxide being injected into meat to give it its red color. Number 6, the FDA approved viruses to be sprayed on the meat. And number 7, Zeranol is used in the meat. And all these links will be below where you can read these articles. And now we go on to birds. Number 1, dirty birds. 83% of birds harbor salmonella or campylobacter. And number 2, poultry is fingered as number 1 food poisoning culprit. Okay, and there will be links below for those. And now fish. The U.S. streams full of mercury-tainted fish. There's several links that you can read about that. And we're told in the Spirit of Prophecy in 4A SG, page 139, mercury taken into the system ever retain their poisonous strength as long as there is a particle of it left in the system. These poisonous preparations have destroyed their millions and left sufferers upon the earth to linger out a miserable existence. All are better off without these dangerous mixtures. Okay? Now there's another article about fish. Farm salmon fish increases chance of cancer. Many people think, oh, I eat farm fish. No, that's no better. So I'll have the link below for that as well. And then I'm going to talk now and give you some quotes about the dangers of consuming flesh food. Ministry of Healing, page 313 says, flesh was never the best food, but its use is now doubly objectionable. Since disease in animals is rapidly increasing, people are continually eating flesh that's filled with tuberculosis and cancerous germs. Tuberculosis, cancer, and other fatal diseases are thus communicated. Then in 2T, page 63, paragraph 3 says the liability to take disease is increased tenfold by meat eating. Your safest course is to let meat alone. Ministry of Healing 315. The effects of a flesh diet may not be immediately realized, but this is no evidence that it's not harmful. Few can be made to believe that it is the meat they have eaten which has poisoned their blood and caused their suffering. Many die of diseases wholly due to meat eating, while the real cause is not suspected by themselves or by others. And that is so true. You try to talk to people about eating meat, and they're like, oh, diet doesn't have anything to do with it. They don't believe what you say about eating meat. And so they don't change their diet, and then they get sick and all these problems come. We're also told in Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 388, cancers, tumors, and all inflammatory diseases are largely caused by meat eating. Then Counsels on Diet and Foods, same page, the meat diet is a serious question. Shall human beings live on the flesh of dead animals? The answer from the light God has given is no, decidedly no. The testimony of examiners is that very few animals are free from disease. And if that was true back in Sister White's day, can you imagine what it is in our day? It's way, way worse. The consumption of all flesh is harmful, especially pork. Now we're told in Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 393, that pork eating is still causing the most intense suffering to the human race. Also in the Bible, in Leviticus 11, it's listed as an unclean meat. And we're not to make the use of flesh food a test of fellowship, but we should consider the influence that professed believers who use these flesh foods have over others. Now, it shouldn't take people long to advance either. You know, many people who've been in the faith for many years, they're still eating meat. And I just had someone come to me not too long ago wanting help to get off of meat. And I told them, you know, just stop eating it for a couple of days a week and go slow. And they're like, wow, I never thought of that. So it's real easy to get off of meat. And then we're told in First Manuscript Release, truths that we have been years learning must be learned in a few months by those who now embrace the third angel's message. Those who embrace the truth will now have to step fast. So you see, we have to move fast. We can't just wait years and years and months to get our diet right. We have to do it now. And so when people are still eating meat, there's some rules for eating flesh in the Bible. And this is all in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and one of them is in Acts. But number one, the meat must be clean. That's Leviticus 11, as I mentioned earlier, and also Deuteronomy 14. Number two, no fat, Leviticus 3:17. No blood, number three, Leviticus 3:17. No blemish, Leviticus 3:1. Not strangled, Acts 15:20. It cannot be cooked in its mother's milk, Deuteronomy 14:21. So example for that is no stroganoff. People have beef stroganoff, and that's beef and then, you know, milk that they make thick and whatever they do with it. So that's out. And meat cannot be dying of itself. That's Deuteronomy 14:21. And then it must be eaten by the third day. And that's Leviticus 19:5-7. When you go to the store and buy meat, it's more than 3 days old. And the way the meat in the market is prepared, it's not according to biblical guidelines. God gave us statutes and judgments that were not good, Ezekiel 20:25. So many people say, well, what about fish? Well, as I mentioned earlier, fish isn't that good either. But here's a quote from Ministry of Healing, page 314, says, in many places, fish become so contaminated by the filth on which they feed as to be a cause of disease. This is especially the case where the fish come in contact with the sewage of large cities. The fish that are fed on the contents of the drains may pass into distant waters and may be caught where the water is pure and fresh. Thus, when used as food, they bring disease and death on those who do not even suspect the danger. So a question people often ask is, if Jesus ate fish, then why can't we eat it? Well, the meat in Jesus' day was not contaminated, number one. There was no mercury and other diseases in that meat or toxins or poisons. And also the way the meat in the market is prepared today, it's not according to biblical guidelines, as I said. And I doubt very much that Jesus would eat meat today, especially when we're counseled to get off the meat. And Proverbs 4:18 says, the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. And Christ says, my sheep hear my voice and they follow me, John 10:27. And now Jesus Christ is now in the most holy place. And there's not one article of flesh food there. He went into the most holy place, remember, in 1844. So anyway, we're not to be eating meat today. And meat eating causes many problems. I'm going to list 25 of them right now. Number one, an appetite for liquor, CD 268, contaminates the blood, CD 384. Apoplexy, which is a sudden deprivation of all sense in your voluntary motion. Kind of what happens with the jab. But anyway, 2SM 419. Your blood is filled with cancerous tumors in 3T56. Cancer, MH 313. Cholera, 4SGA 147. Convulsions, 2SM 419. Cramps, 2SM 419. Fainting spells, Councils on Health 531. Fevers, 2T 153. Pain, CH 575. Death, CH 575 through 576 too. Death, CH 575 and 576. Inflammation, MM 278. Unhealthy muscles, CD 387. Excited nerves, CH 114. Passions are excited, Education 203. Poisons of the worst kind, 2T 404 and 4 to 405. Resistance to disease is lowered, and your immune system is compromised as well. CD 386. to 387. And you get tumors in the glands of your neck, under your chin, and in your armpits, and that's CD 388. Secret vice, which is masturbation, is encouraged in childhood. Counsels on Diet and Foods, 399 to 400. Your stomach is injured, 2T486. Perverted taste buds, 2T486. Tuberculosis, CD 388. Sudden death, 2SM419. Tumors, CD 383. And harmful, especially to children, 2T362. So I'm sure there's much more too if you do a search of your own. There's no safety in the eating of flesh of dead animals, CD 411 says. Why not? Because disease is contracted by the use of meat, CD 411. And meat is the greatest disease breeder that can be introduced into the human system. That's MM 266. Now here's some things to keep in mind. It is a mistake to suppose that muscular strength depends on the use of animal food. The needs of the system can be better supplied and more vigorous health can be enjoyed without its use. The grains with fruits, nuts, and vegetables contain all the nutritive properties necessary to make good blood. These elements are not so well or fully supplied by a flesh diet. Ministry of Healing, page 316. So many people think that they're not going to get all the proper nutrition that they need if they don't eat meat. Well, that's false. Now, had the use of flesh been essential to health and strength, animal food would have been included in the diet appointed man in the beginning. Ministry of Healing 316. Meat is not essential for health or strength, else the Lord made a mistake when he provided food for Adam and Eve before their fall. All the elements of nutrition are contained in the fruits, vegetables, and grains. Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 395. CD, page 313 says, those who eat flesh are but eating grains and vegetables at second hand. For the animal receives these things from the nutrition that produces growth. The life that was in the grains and vegetables passes into the eater. We receive it by eating the flesh of the animal if you're eating meat. How much better to get it direct by eating the food God provided for our use. We don't need to eat the animal to get the fruits and vegetables that they eat. We just need to eat them ourselves. Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 380 says, vegetables, fruits, and grains should compose our diet. Not an ounce of flesh meat should enter our stomachs. The eating of flesh is unnatural. We are to return to God's original purpose in the creation of man. Page 381, same book, says, those who have received instruction regarding the evil of the use of flesh foods, tea and coffee, rich and unhealthful food preparations, and who are determined to make a covenant with God by sacrifice will not continue to indulge their appetite for food that they know to be unhealthful. God demands that the appetite be cleansed and that self-denial be practiced in regard to these things which are not good. This is a work that will have to be done before his people can stand before him, a perfected people. Did you hear that? We have to get rid of the meat before we can even be a perfected people. And then another great quote is page 380 in Counsel on Diet and Foods. Among those who are waiting for the coming of the Lord, meat eating will eventually be done away. Flesh will cease to form a part of their diet. We should ever keep this end in view and endeavor to work steadily for it. And then 2T60 says, those who profess to be fitting for translation should not become butchers. In other words, don't be eating meat because they have to be butchered and be killed for you to eat it. Ministry of Healing 316 says, what man with a human heart who has ever cared for domestic animals could look into their eyes so full of confidence and affection and willingly give them over to the butcher's knife? How could he devour their flesh as a sweet morsel? So what about if you crave flesh food? What can be done? Well, we're told in MM 283, if our appetites clamor for the flesh of dead animals, it is necessary to fast and pray for the Lord to give his grace to deny fleshly lusts which war against the soul. Also, Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 292 says, do not press giving up flesh even to those who are very sick. And the quote begins now. Persons with tumors running their life away should not be burdened with the question as to whether they should leave meat eating or not. Be careful to make no stringent resolution in regard to this matter. It will not help the case to force changes, but will do injury to the non-meat eating principles. Give lectures in the parlor. Educate the mind, but force no one. For such reformation made under oppress is worthless. Well, God doesn't force us either. He gives us choice. But he tells us that we shouldn't be doing it. But of course, he lets us choose. So why not press the meat eating issue up front? See CTBH 224. The light given me was that meat in a healthy condition was not to be cut off all at once. But talks were to be given in the parlor in regard to the use of dead flesh of any kind, that fruits, grains, and vegetables properly prepared were all the system required to keep it in health, but that they must first show that we have not need to use meat where there was an abundance of fruit, as in California, after using meat so abundantly as they had done. It would be necessary for them to use meat sparingly at first and finally discontinue it entirely. Like I was saying earlier, you just give it up a couple days a week, and do that for a couple weeks, and then give it up another day or another 2 days, and keep doing that. And in a couple months, you'll be off the meat. But you got to learn what to eat too, instead. Many people say, what should I eat? Well, there's a lot of good dishes you can make, with beans and different types of, you can make your own fake burger that you can put in chili or spaghetti or on pizza, or there's a lot of things you can do. And you just have to learn these things. But we don't need a lot of protein, but we do need protein. I can't remember if I did a video on protein, but I'll be doing one on protein. Anyway, another quote, CD 413 says, I labored most earnestly to have all meat discarded, but this difficult question must be handled discreetly and not rashly after meat had been used 3 to 4 times a day. 3 times a day, I'm sorry. The patients must be educated from a health standpoint, because people eat 3 meals a day and they have meat at every meal. I know, because I used to be one of them. Now, there's going to be a link below on 2 videos. One's called Forks Over Knives. You can watch that and learn fascinating things. And the other one I mentioned earlier, Meet Your Meat. Now, here's the steps to take to get someone off of meat too. Here's a quote. Is a man a tobacco user, a tea and coffee drinker, a meat eater, taking his 3 meals? Let him begin with tobacco and put that away. So if someone's smoking, get rid of that first. Then let him leave off the use of tea and coffee. So first the tobacco, then the tea and coffee. Eat less meat and make the 3rd meal very light, and soon he can dispense with flesh meats altogether. Next, leave off the 3rd meal. What about our ministers? Let not any of our ministers set an evil example. What kind of an example? Evil example in the eating of flesh meat. Let them and their families live up to the light of health reform. Wow, that's a powerful quote. You can also, that's in CD 399, paragraph 3. You can also see Revelation 14, verses 6 through 7, and Proverbs 8:13. Now, also MM 238 says, those people who love the truth and appreciate the question of temperance in all its bearings should not be placed in the charge of a minister who has not heeded the light God has given upon health reform. What help can a man be to a church if he's not walking in the light? Another powerful quote about our ministers. Wow. Also see 2T, page 552. Then here's another great one. 6T 378 says, no man should be set apart as a teacher of the people while his own teaching or example contradicts the testimony God has given his servants to bear in regard to diet. For this will bring confusion. His disregard of health reform unfits him to stand as the Lord's messenger. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so Seventh-day Adventists are not to be placed under a minister who is not following the health message. MM 238 says the medical missionary work must be recognized. Those who go forth to engage in the work of the ministry must be intelligent upon the subject of health reform. How do we get intelligent? We read our books and study our health message. Continuing with the quote, those men who after many years' experience have yet no appreciation of the medical missionary work should not be appointed to preside over our churches. They are not walking in the light of present truth for this time. Those who love the truth and appreciate the question of temperance in all its bearings should not be placed in the charge of a minister who has not heeded the light God has given upon health reform. What help can a man be to a church if he's not walking in the light? MM 238. And that was written in 1901, so not that long before she died. Also, here's another powerful quote about ministers. CD 404 says, will any who are ministers of the gospel, proclaiming the most solemn truth ever given to mortals, set an example in returning to the flesh pots of Egypt? Will those who are supported by the tithe from God's storehouse permit themselves by self-indulgence to poison the life-giving current flowing through their veins? Will they disregard the light and warnings that God has given them? Wow. Read 1 Corinthians 3, 16 and 17 and 1 Corinthians 6, 19 through 20. Now here's a few more quotes. There's a great need of instruction in regard to dietetic reform. Wrong habits of eating and the use of unhealthful food are in no small degree responsible for the intemperance and crime and wretchedness that curse the world. Did you hear that? Meat is responsible for crime. Ministry of Healing, page 146. Where wrong habits of diet have indulged, there should be no delay in reform. CD 126. At this stage of Earth's history, meat eating is dishonoring to God. BTS, July 1, 1902, paragraph 3. Now, what if someone has an addiction to meat and they find it very difficult to get off of it? Well, here's what you do. CD 485 says, there was a time when I was in a situation similar, in some respect to yours. I had indulged the desire for vinegar, but I resolved with the help of God to overcome this appetite. I fought the temptation, determined not to be mastered by this habit. For weeks I was very sick, but I kept saying over and over, the Lord knows all about it. If I die, I die, but I will not yield to this desire. So the struggle continued, and I was sorely afflicted for many weeks. All thought that it was impossible for me to live. You may be sure we sought the Lord very earnestly. The most fervent prayers were offered for my recovery. I continued to resist the desire for vinegar, and at last I conquered. Now I have no inclination to taste anything of the kind. Praise God. This experience has been of a great value to me in many ways. I obtained a complete victory. And one more quote, I relate this experience to you for your help and your encouragement. I have faith, my sister, that you can come through this trial and reveal that God is the helper of his children in every time of need. If you determine to conquer this habit and will fight it perseveringly, you can obtain an experience of the highest value. When you set your will resolutely to break off this indulgence, you will have the help you need from God. Try it, my sister. And that's all in Counsels on Diet and Foods, page 485. So you see, Sister White had a struggle and addiction with vinegar. And that's just like alcohol. And this is how she overcame it and told us all about it. So anyway, we too can overcome our addictions. You know, we have to trust the Lord and pray to God and go to him with these things. And he will help us. Anyway, there's a book that I highly recommend that I've talked about before called Health Power, written by Dr. Hans Diehl, who is known for the CHIP program. And his books have over 2 million copies out in 17 languages, probably more by now. And that covers this subject today and many other topics I've talked about in the past. It also includes the natural laws that I talked about. And if you want to purchase a copy, just go do a Google search in Amazon or Google. Anyway, that's our time for today. I hope that what you've heard on here will be a blessing to you and your family. And until we meet again, may the good Lord bless and keep you throughout this week. And remember, God loves you and he wants you to be in good health. So eat that which is good. Bye-bye.